Sometime back in the early 90s, I got roped into a real-life pyramid scheme. Not a scam coin or a multi-level marketing firm, but a genuine pyramid scheme where people at the bottom would be tricked into sending money to the top with the promise that this would make everyone stinking rich. And when cleaning out some old stuff, I discovered that for some reason, I've actually kept the official documents from this pyramid organization for some 30 years. So in this video I'm going to take a look at this old scam and explain how it works in detail, and then see how that all compares to Bitcoin, which is often also accused of being a pyramid scheme. And I'll tell you all about it as soon as you hit that like and subscribe button. Now, this all happened sometime in the early 90s, and though I'm not sure about the exact year, the important thing to remember is that this was still in the infant days of the internet, when information was not at all as easily available as it is today. I would have been in my early teens at the time and had never even heard about pyramid schemes before, so at some point an adult had to sit me down and explain just what it was I had got myself involved in, to which I, being the rowdy teen that I was, of course furiously denied the notion that this was bad in any way. Because here they are, the old scammer papers from the Golden Circle, as this pyramid scheme was called. And looking at these, the reason for my strong denial becomes instantly obvious, as the very first thing you notice on the front page is of course the large text saying just how much you can earn from taking part in this. 218,700 Norwegian kroner amounts to about 25,000 US dollars, and if we take inflation into account, this would be almost double today, which was of course an unimaginable large amount to my 12 or 13-year-old self. So it didn't matter what anyone said, as the promise of this insane reward was worth at least giving it a chance. And just holding these documents now, you notice that it's not some cheap paper from an old dot matrix printer, which was the only thing available to home users at the time. It's not glossy, but a little bit rough, with some subtle irregularities in the paper, which gives it the feel of an important security document. And as you can see, this has also been translated to Norwegian, as this was very much an international scam, which also explains some awkward sentences coming up. And flipping the page, we get all the nitty-gritty about how this all supposedly works and how you can become rich yourself. And one of the first things you see is that they call it a game system based on the chain letter principle. Now, if you were born after the internet, then the chain letter principle might seem a little bit weird today, but once upon a time this was not such an uncommon thing, where people would send some sort of letter around and each recipient was supposed to keep sending it to more and more people, basically in a primitive way of going viral long before that was a thing. And additionally, these papers claim that this system is controlled by an advanced database program, which just screams buzzwords from its time when personal computers were just getting popular. They also make sure to point out that this is not like regular lotteries, which enforces the idea that this is a game, and all you have to do to play is to buy this certificate from a friend for 100 Norwegian kroner, which amounts to about 10 US dollars, which contains 7 names in a row below one another. And each one of these 7 names are people above you in the chain who have already invested in the system. So now you're supposed to send 100 kroner to the person at the top of this chain and another 100 kroner to the Golden Circle organization running this whole scheme. So at this point you're out 300 Norwegian kroner in total. But here comes the ingenious part, which makes it such a sure thing, because you will then get 3 new certificates in the mail. And we're talking snail mail here, which you're supposed to sell on to 3 new people for 100 Norwegian kroner each, meaning you will get back all of your 300 Norwegian kroner investment. So if you were to do this, then you're back to zero, and there's basically no risk whatsoever. So it's just a matter of sitting back and waiting for the money to start rolling in. And since this was in the early 90s, it was also way before anyone was concerned about privacy or GDPR, so these were all real names on this list, and you could see who these people are. And that is also where the system got its strength, as you would often know some of these above you, and you could tell that they were indeed real people. So the person directly above you in this list would be the person you had bought it from, which in my case was my brother. And the person above him was one of his friends, and above him was his brother again, and so forth and so on. And I'm sure you've all heard about the 6 degrees of separation theory, where anyone could be connected to anyone else on the planet through 6 links. But it turns out that things were very rarely as widespread as all that in this system, and in this link, the 7th person on the list would often be a friend of a friend of a friend, which in my case meant he lived in the next town over. But moving on, the paper goes on to have a tiny chart which illustrates just how this whole system supposedly spreads through branches, which sub-branches 7 times over. So you start out by selling it to 3 people, who each of them again sell it to 3 more, and when each of these sell to 3 new people again, there's 27 people below you, and so it goes for 7 times, until you're the one at the top of the chain with some 2,187 people below you, who will all send 100 kroner to your account, which is where the claim for making 218,700 Norwegian kroner comes from. So, do you notice anything peculiar about this drawing? And now, when you bought these certificates, there was a 2-week deadline for you to sell your 3 certificates on. And they also go on to note that the faster you will sell these certificates, the faster you will go on to reap the rewards. And that you should also make sure that the people you sell them to will actually keep on selling their own certificates, which turn out to be the pitfall of this whole system. But more on that later. However, they also claim that they will monitor these changes so that if one branch would stop, meaning a person wouldn't sell any certificates, then the organization would reboot the chain by passing your branch on to someone who manages to sell more than just the obligatory 3 certificates. And on the next page, it goes into more detail about how to sign up and where you should send the money. And this is also where they've mentioned the 100 Norwegian kroner you have to send to them, meaning the Golden Circle organization. And it's actually kind of funny because even though they tell you to just send 100 kroner bill in an envelope to Germany, which is where their headquarters was, I guess, they also point out that sending money in the mail is not recommended by the post office. So they advise using a registered letter. But this all begs the question, why couldn't you just transfer them their money to a bank account? Would have been much easier, no? But the answer is, of course, that this would have also made it much easier for the financial authorities to put a stop to this whole thing, so best to just put the money in an envelope. And supposedly you could also check your own placement in the chain at any time by sending them another letter and they would get back to you in the mail because, the days before the internet. And then, kind of amusing, they go on to warn you about fake replicas of this pyramid scheme, claiming that the Golden Circle is the biggest and most successful chain letter in all of Europe, which has caused a lot of imitations to pop up. And supposedly, some even claim that Golden Circle is a copy of them. Can you imagine the frustration these poor scammers must have felt when other scammers started bickering about who was the OG scammer, knowing full well that none of them could ever go to the police. And they also have a 4th page with frequently asked questions, which tries to debunk some common criticism that this is indeed a pyramid scheme by saying that this whole system is supported by the people who are not able to sell their own certificates, who they call the game's losers. And they have a section concerning legality where they point out that this has supposedly been declared legal in Germany on 2 separate occasions, and that they have a team of lawyers who have been tried in a bunch of countries but always gotten off the hook because of some loopholes concerning foreign lottery games. And again, being before the internet meant that it would have been very difficult to verify any of this. However, they also make clear that it is actually illegal to advertise or market this game in any way, so it will all have to be hush-hush from friend to friend. And as a final proof of just how honest and legit this all is, they also state that they themselves only get 33% of the total winnings, which is supposed to be reassuring, I guess. But of course, in reality, the only people who ever make any money of these pyramid schemes are the people behind the scenes who gets a guaranteed payment for every transaction within the system. So in truth, this percentage should have been much closer to 100, because that's how this old scam works. But now let's move on to Bitcoin and see how does that compare to the Golden Circle pyramid scheme. And right off the bat, the most obvious difference is probably that unlike these certificates from the Golden Circle, which are just fancy papers that were essentially worthless, Bitcoin is an actual asset. So after you bought into Bitcoin, you do actually own a piece of Bitcoin and not just a fancy receipt. It is up to you what you do with this coin, and you can of course sell it or hold onto it forever, but there's nothing you have to do to keep playing the game, and there's no requirement for you to rope in other people in order to turn a profit, because the value of Bitcoin will go up and down irregardless of how many people you personally manage to recruit. Because another major difference is of course that Bitcoin is decentralized, meaning there's no one at the top who's running the show. There are of course those who invested early and are now reaping the rewards of holding over time through growing adoption, just like any other investment. But these early adopters are no more in charge of Bitcoin than anyone else, and they also don't make any actual profit until they choose to sell. So it's not like they are receiving any money directly from the people who invest later on, as it is with the pyramid schemes. However, a main point here is that, contrary to the guaranteed rewards you would be earning from the golden circle, Bitcoin makes no promises. Even though ever since its inception, the price of Bitcoin has been going up and up and up, it has also tumbled time and time again in between all these new highs. So if you were to buy and sell Bitcoin at the wrong times, there's no system to guarantee you getting rich. Because most importantly, Bitcoin is of course not based upon a pyramid. Even though there is a blockchain in Bitcoin, it has nothing to do with these old chain letters where the goal was to get as many branches below you as possible. Because there's no hierarchy involved in Bitcoin, and you don't get paid from other people below you selling coins on your chain. So safe to say, Bitcoin is absolutely not a pyramid scheme. However, Bitcoin is also far from the only cryptocurrency out there, and there are a whole bunch of others which might very well be a pyramid scheme. And there are certain telltale signs which you can look out for example, if they are centralized, meaning there is someone running the show, and these people make guaranteed promises of rewards, or if they don't let you control your own keys, and have a pyramid structure or a multi-level marketing strategy where you are encouraged to establish a team of sellers below you, which will again create new teams and so forth and so on. And for those of you who might be wondering how much I ended up making of this golden circle scheme, it turned out to be quite a lot of nothing. Because first of all, just selling these certificates proved a huge hassle, as most people are naturally skeptical to anything that seems too good to be true. And I think I managed to sell just 2 of mine to some high school friends, one of which had an angry father who came to my house and demanded that I take it all back, which I can now fully understand. And the other person I sold it to didn't actually sell a single of their own certificate, which meant that the chain stopped and my chances of getting rich dried up pretty fast. And by the way, the Golden Circle's claim about an advanced database rebooting broken chains was of course just baloney, and I never saw a dime of the promised rewards. But this also brings us to another major difference between cryptocurrencies and pyramid schemes, in that cryptocurrencies have value far beyond people getting rich from the price going up or down. There are innumerable ways blockchain technology can change pretty much any business or service or industry for the better. And that's not some scammy sales pitch, because this has actually already begun, with more and more use cases being invented every day. And this will only accelerate as blockchains become an integral part of society, much like the internet has long since become. And I'll even go as far as to say that this blockchainification of society has already come so far that we're way beyond the point of no return. And like it or not, crypto is here to stay. Pyramid schemes, on the other hand, are always doomed to fail by their own design. After all, there's always going to be a limited amount of people who can join in, and when nobody wants to buy anymore, well, they all go up in flames. And that's all I have for you today, my cryptic friends. Please remember to hit that like and subscribe button, and do be careful out there.